Welcome back to our study in the two letters Paul wrote to Timothy. In our last session, we began chapter 3 of the second letter, and we saw a list of characteristics that Paul ascribed to men who are not of the faith, or to men who claim to be of the faith and certainly do not live it out. His final advice to Timothy was to avoid these men, and we would probably add the phrase, like the plague. And then he goes on to tell us what they do and how they operate, and we'll pick up there right now. For among them are those who enter into households and captivate weak women, weighed down by sins, led on by various impulses, always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. For just as Jannes and Jambres opposed Moses, so those men also opposed the truth. Men of depraved mind, rejected as regards the faith. But they will not make further progress, for their folly will be obvious to all, as also that of those two came to be. Paul is giving an illustration of how these wicked people operate. They take advantage of others. And they do this by finding weaknesses in people and taking over and helping them and forcing them to succumb to their will as opposed to God's will. He uses the illustration of two men who opposed Moses named Jannes and Jambres. It's interesting because if you go back to the referencing of this in Exodus chapter 7, you will see those men's names are not mentioned, but we know who they are because apparently Paul, being a Jewish scholar, had learned of all of this when he was in his days before Christianity. And he knew these people and what they stood for, and they were wicked, vile sorcerers in Pharaoh's court. And this is why he uses the comparison of these people to the people we live around that we are to avoid, as Paul says. These people are demonic. These people do not care about anything but themselves. And so they will fall. Their folly will get them. And they will not be successful in the big picture, even though at times it seems like they are. We see a lot of this type of corruption and evil and wickedness in our world today. And it seems like they're never caught, or they're never convicted, or they are never put to shame at least. And that is maybe the case temporarily, but in the big picture, in the big judgment that will come with the return of Christ, we will see justice made whole at that time. And so we don't really need to worry about it, but we have to recognize who they are and obviously refrain from becoming involved with them. We'll pick up there in our next session.